Yuka Royer joins me on set. Hi, Yuka.
Hi, Monty.
Well, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced plans to nationalise British steel as he fights for his own political survival following his party's poor results in local elections.
Well, Mr. Starmer said that he would introduce a bill this week to give the government powers to take full ownership of British steel in Scunthorpe. This is the last in the UK that can make steel from scratch. Last year, the government seized control of the site from its Chinese owner to stop the potential closure of its blast furnaces and now wants to move on to the next step. Luke Schrager explains.
For the UK, protecting strategic industries is a must, and the government is starting with British steel.
Steel is the ultimate sovereign capability, but in Scunthorpe, we've been negotiating with the current owner, and a commercial sale has not been possible. So I can announce that legislation will be brought forward this week to give the government powers, subject to that public interest test, to take full national ownership of British steel.
UK authorities took control of British steel in April last year, after its Chinese owners were accused of seeking to shut down its blast furnaces, the UK's last remaining primary facility producing industrial-grade steel. Jignier said the site was no longer financially sustainable. The UK's steel industry has seen serious decline in recent decades, now battered further by soaring energy prices, a glut of cheaper Chinese steel suppressing prices, and US tariffs raising costs. By June, the British government will have spent over £600 million supporting the firm as it sought another private buyer, without success.
Nationalisation is not an end goal. This must be the beginning of a clear and credible long-term plan for British steel. We need to see a detailed investment strategy that supports a managed transition to low-carbon steelmaking and broader action to tackle the sky-high energy prices in the UK, which are undermining the competitiveness of the steel industry.
Decarbonising the facility, switching its furnaces from burning coal derivative to electrical power is likely to weigh heavily on the UK's budget. The previous owners had outlined a plan which came with a price tag of over £1 billion.
And global oil prices are up again after U.S. President Donald Trump rejected Iran's peace proposal as totally unacceptable.
Well, crude prices surged as President Trump said the ceasefire with Iran was unbelievably weak and on life support. International benchmark Brent is currently priced around $104 a barrel. The US's WTI is being traded around $98 a barrel. Now, the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively shut with traffic reduced to a trickle. As a lasting peace remains elusive, JP Morgan says it expects Brent crude to remain above $100 for much of 2026, even if the Strait of Hormuz reopens in June. The CEO of Saudi oil giant Aramco warned, meanwhile, that recovery in the energy market will likely extend into next year, even if the blockade ended today.
And soaring fuel prices are also hitting American drivers, and Donald Trump says the government will suspend the federal gas tax.
Yeah, well, Mr. Trump said that he'd moved to suspend the levy till it's appropriate. The federal tax on petrol generates about $2.5 billion a month and is used for construction and maintenance of roads and bridges. But the president can't single-handedly decide to suspend it. Such a measure will have to be approved by Congress. And even if it is waived, it's unlikely to give much relief to drivers, as the tax stands at 18 cents a gallon for regular gasoline and 24 cents for diesel, while the average price at the pump has jumped to around $4.5 and $5.5 a gallon, respectively.
So here in France, farmers dumped manure near a refinery run by TotalEnergies in protest of higher fuel costs.
Well, a few dozen farmers gathered near Total's Faisin refinery south of Lyon, demanding the government do more to help them cope with soaring fuel prices. After dumping manure and rubbish, protesters forced tank lorries to turn away from the site early Monday morning. Although they didn't lay siege, they didn't continue to block the site. They said that they just want to make their voices heard, and that they were now spending twice as much for diesel, while nitrogen, of course, which is used to make fertilizer, their prices also were rising.
Well, so a lot of attention has been on fossil fuel supply, but around the world, climate change is having an increasing economic impact, from flood damage to wildfire destruction.
And in many places, climate change is also costing the economy in lost labour as workers suffer from exhaustion and other heat-related illnesses. In India, new forms of insurance are helping to defray at least some of the cost to low-income workers. Brian Quinn has the story.
At this bus stop in the western Indian city of Ahmedabad, a misting system keeps passengers cool as they wait for their ride. For clothing seller Lata Solanki, the real heat hits as she goes door to door with her wares.
It's very tiring to walk around carrying all this. I face problems because of the heat while travelling back and forth.
Extreme heat has affected her health, forcing her to take time off and eating into her already low earnings. Now, though, she's at least partially covered by insurance that pays out when the temperature tops 42.7 degrees Celsius for 2 straight days. It's called a parametric policy, one triggered not by individual damage claims, but rather automatically by environmental factors like extreme heat, heavy rain, and pollution. The program is run by a partnership between a non-profit housing trust and a private insurance company and paid for by a climate resilience NGO focused on protecting women and vulnerable communities from the impacts of extreme heat. Actuaries acknowledge that it's a niche product, but say demand is growing.
More than 50,000 poor people we have covered in this, which are farmers, migrant laborers. So we feel while we do such kind of products, we are also helping the socio-economic poor background people to uplift their life, to make it better.
In 2024, severe heat cost the Indian economy an estimated 247 billion labor hours, with a price tag of close to $194 billion. Hardest hit are the agriculture and construction industries, as they require the most strenuous outdoor physical activity.
That was Brian Quinn with that report, and that's it from the business desk.
Okay, Yuka, thanks so much.